just going to ask you out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another cartoon commentary. Very special one. We've got Buzz Dixon back from the Sunbow 80s team. And we're taking a look at Inhumanoids Cult of Darkness, which is episode 8. Buzz, welcome back to Cartoon Commentary. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Very excited to have you on here. And Cult of Darkness, this is one of the ones that you wrote for Inhumanoids?
Yes. Yeah, this was one of the craziest things that happened to me in animation. We had the Hasbro had launched the Inhumanoids toy line, and to make a very long story short, they were too expensive for kids to buy on their own, and basically moms looked at these things and said, "No, we're not spending $20 to bring that into the house." And so the toy line, even though the show was very popular, the toy line kind of fizzled out. When they canceled the toy line, they told us we're committed to finishing the first season of the series. Basically, as long as we don't get any complaints from the FCC, do whatever you want. And our reaction was, "Oh, really?" So they literally took all restraints off of us, and like they said, as long as the FCC didn't contact Hasbro and say, "What the hell are you doing?" We can do what we want. So this one, when we get to the point, I'll mention it. But I actually had the voice actors' eyes go wide, and can we actually say this on television? It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. You know. It's the toy line's canceled. Nobody cares. Go.
So a lot of them had worked on G.I. Joe and Transformers, and Inhumanoids is out there. It's a horror show. It's like, what if a horror show, or
you could say it's Transformers meets H.P. Lovecraft.
That's what I was thinking. H.P. Lovecraft.
They're not transforming robots, but they're guys in power suits, and they're fighting these Lovecraftian monsters. Everybody who worked on the show, we weren't all horror fans, but everybody was aware of who H.P. Lovecraft was aware of the Cthulhu mythos. And it was like, great, let's just wade into this and do it all out. Don't hold anything back.
Do you know who came up with the concept? Who decided, like, you know what, H.P. Lovecraft for kids needs to be a thing?
It would have been somebody at Hasbro. All we knew is that we would get occasionally from Hasbro. They would, send us something. This is the new toy line we're doing. This is the background. Come up with some ideas for TV shows for it. With G.I. Joe, a lot of the uncredited work belongs to Larry Hama, because Larry wrote the character bios that eventually they were shrunk down and used for the blister packs for the toys, but he wrote like page length character bios on all the characters. So we got the full thing, and so we ended up with a writer's Bible that had like 80 some character bios in it, which was great because it gave us insight on the characters. We didn't have to figure out who they were, what they were doing. We could just go, "Oh, okay, he's this guy, he's that guy." We could build shows around them.
And was that Flint for this show, for the Earth Core and the other characters?
Flint was certainly in charge.
Dilly, I should say.
I mean, I think if he isn't officially the producer on it, for all practical purposes, he was a producer. And he was certainly coming up with a lot of the ideas. I can almost guarantee he came up with the idea of running one of the characters for president and having him win. So,
Augur for president.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, again, it's like, nobody cares what happens at this point. Just go crazy.
What's the worst they can do? Cancel us again?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start this rolling. So put in your Inhumanoids DVD out there, or your VHS, or if you can find it by other means, then do so. We found a copy somewhere, and we're watching a 20-minute, 10-second copy. So there's actually 2 versions of this out around the internet. The longer one just has a little recap of what's come before, but we're watching the 20-minute, 10-second one without that recap. We're all synced up at 0. So I'm going to give you the countdown. 3, 2, 1, play. And when I'm saying play, everyone's pressing play. Everyone ready? 3, 2, 1, play. Now, I've waited a long time. I've waited since I was a kid to ask this question. This isn't the version of the theme song that we're hearing right now, but there's a different version of the theme song. And the first thing that said is, Frank, look, it's another attack.
Frank, look! It's another attack! There's a human!
Humanoids!
Who's Frank?
I don't know.
That's just part of the zaniness of this show.
Yeah.
Where you going, Jeremy? Hey, leave me alone or I'm gonna tell. Listen, Jeremy.
This is one of the things, I thought, the bullies in teen comedies at the time were always the jocks or the in crowd. I thought, let's make the nerds the bullies for a change.
I love that line. Did you have a favorite Earth Core guy to write?
I'm going to be honest with you. Since finishing the show, and I've told this to people, for my own mental well-being, when I'm completed with a project, I put it down, I walk away from it. I'm delighted to talk with fans about stuff that I've done, but the fans have the ability to focus on something and think about it all the time and just keep reliving their favorite parts, and more power to them. I mean, that's what we made the shows for people to enjoy. Mm-hmm. But from a creative point of view, I put it down, I move on to the next one. So maybe as the show goes along, I'll remember if I had one who was a particular favorite or not. But, for the most part, I'm drawing a blank. So I'm sorry.
My guess would be Augur. He seems to be the bald one.
Oh yeah, he was. Oh yeah, he was definitely the oddball of the group. I mean, he was the one that everybody you could put anything in his mouth to say, and people would just shrug and go, "Well, yeah, he'd say that."
And that had to be a lot of fun for Michael Bell to play Augur.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Such a straight man as Duke on G.I. Joe, and then to play this loose cannon buzzsaw.
Oh, Michael he's got an enormous range as an actor. He's very funny in person. We did a thing a few years ago before COVID. We had several of the voice actors from G.I. Joe and Transfomers in a panel. And we took, and the funny thing was, most of them had also worked on Smurfs at one point or another. They had all been named characters in the Smurfs. And we took one of the scenes from Pulp Fiction, and we just had them do it as Smurf characters. It was just crazy. I mean, if you can imagine, Papa Smurf saying some of, Samuel L. Jackson's lines. It's pretty funny. Now, this is Hector Ramirez. And for those who may not be aware, I created Hector for an episode of G.I. Joe called 20 Questions. And the premise of that show was that this Geraldo Rivera-like newscaster thought the whole G.I. Joe Cobra conflict was a hoax and was determined to expose it. And so he comes to the G.I. Joe base, and he ends up getting mixed up with all these crazy things, and he ends up in the middle of a big battle between the Joes and Cobra. And I was doing it to parody Geraldo Rivera because I do not like him as a journalist. I have very low opinion of his standards. In any case, short while after that, I wrote a two-parter for G.I. Joe called The Traitor. And rather than do the standard in our last episode recap, I thought, well, let's bring Hector back and have him, as part of his TV show, 20 Questions, just recap the previous episode as if it were a news story. Is one of the Joe team a traitor? So we did that, and it went over rather well. And at that point, the other writers on G.I. Joe realized, well, if we ever need to have an info dump where we've got to explain a lot of stuff very fast, Hector's the guy to do it, because it's his job to explain things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he started popping up in Transformers and Gem and other shows because we had the character design down, we had the name cleared by the legal department, we had a voice actor cast, and they just went, well, just use them whenever you need to have an info dump. So Hector ended up appearing on Joe, Transformers, Gem, and Inhumanoids. And if we could have figured it out, we would have gotten him on My Little Pony as well.
We've got the so you making him a clown.
Yeah.
We don't have to read between the lines here.
No. He's trying to disguise himself as, the way people would have looked in the 1960s or something, which the whole point was it's the 80s. People who dress like that are extremely, dated by even the 1980s standards.
Yeah. So this is one of the most terrifying shows that Sunbow ever did. But you've put a lot of humor into this episode. We see a TV.
Oh yeah.
Kirk just narrowly saves the TV, but we forget.
Yeah.
Augur has another shoe.
Yeah.
So at this point, like you said earlier, it just didn't matter if you weren't sticking to the spooky vibe anymore. You could put as much humor in it as you wanted. Yeah.
We could do pretty much as we saw fit. Now, this is one of the problems that they had with the toys. The big characters were top heavy, and they wouldn't stand up on their own. They would topple over, and it was very frustrating for kids. Now, here's where
adults as well. I just picked up a few of these. The big guys. I picked them up a few years ago, and I can attest they do not stand. And now that they're so old and brittle, they fall off and their heads break off.
Yeah. This is the point where the voice actors started raising eyebrows, because I thought Hasbro basically said, as long you can turn them into zombies as long as they become normal at the end. And I go, fine by me, just let me do a 20-minute zombie show. So here we go. This is my contribution to zombie stories.
When I was watching this just before we were doing it, I was really shocked to see how many people got turned into zombies.
Oh yeah.
Herc and Augur, I think.
Yeah.
Is there, if you could do it over and there's no limits, who would you have made a zombie as well? Like, what usually hands-off person would you have done that to?
So often these things are cast. I mean, we make choices on the spur of the moment. There's no in-depth reasoning behind them. You just go, well, it'd be funny if this happened, or it'd be interesting if that happened, and you just do it.
Kind of like when Metlar marries the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. If you ask about it, you undercut yourself, because then you start second guessing yourself. If your gut tells you, yeah, just go with it, do it. Okay.
This part right here where the cops are actually shooting the zombies, I was surprised to see that too, because they usually, like on G.I. Joe, would not want the humans shooting each other, but since these guys were zombies, it didn't matter. They can take a laser blast. Yeah.
That was part of what we could get away with. I mean, we did when I was working on Thundar the Barbarian, we did a story, Brotherhood of Night, that was about a tribe of werewolves that was terrorizing the land. Now this is interesting. They actually let us zap bats and stuff like this because they're mutant bats. So
it's still surprising because they're organic.
Yeah. But they went basically, well, they're not real animals. They're magical things. So yeah, go ahead and kill them all. So I was grateful for that. anyway, with the GI, not GI Joe, the Thundar thing, we turned Thundar into a werewolf at one point, and the thing that the network allowed at that time was, as long as everybody is changed back and they're normal at the end of it, you can turn anybody into a werewolf that you want. And, you know, when we turn them into werewolves, they are now supernatural creatures, and we had more leeway to do things with them. You know, we could bash them around a bit more. We could crash through things and stuff like that.
That's exactly what happens in this episode
Yeah.
as well. You had a great line just a minute ago where the Earth Corps, they remind me so much of the Ghostbusters.
Mhm.
They're not big Hollywood heroes. They're scientists trying to exterminate a pest.
Yeah.
But they took the cab. They don't even have like an ectomobile or anything like that. They take a cab, and then Liquidator makes the other guy pay Bright because he says, "I don't carry money, it's too heavy," while he's hauling this huge suit out of the trunk. And Mangler is just one of the most disgusting, horrific looking creatures on any show ever.
Mm-hmm. We were aware of Ghostbusters, and we did not use them as a specific inspiration for stories and character, but we certainly, you know, were aware of what the movies were, and allowed some of that sensibility to creep in. A thing that I've always told people is, when you're doing science fiction, fantasy, superheroes, embrace the absurdity. And by that I mean the basic concept is typically absurd. If you try to apply realistic logic to it, it collapses immediately. So, okay, fine. It's an absurd proposition. Just embrace it. Go with it. Don't try to explain it. Don't try to rationalize it away. Just, yeah, that's what they do. Keep moving. You know,
Fun. Just have fun with it. That's
Yeah.
very similar to my experience with the new Ghostbusters movie. I had seen a few warnings about it. Oh, it's not any good. I had a blast because I stopped trying to Star Trek it away, explain it away. I just told myself it's Ghostbusters.
It's Ghostbusters. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like the all-female version. I had a great time with that. I haven't seen the last two, but I mean, from what I understand, they honored the premise of the property. I mean, what more can you want?
Mm-hmm.
I always thought, to be honest with you, and I will go a bit far afield. I always thought the Ghostbusters should have become a franchise for every community. There should be like a San Francisco Ghostbusters. There should be a Hong Kong Ghostbusters. That would be great. I mean, you know, bring in all these Chinese ghosts and whatnot. But every major city, in fact, not even every major city, every major region in the world, there should be a unique team of Ghostbusters working there, you know, the equivalent of the Starbucks of the supernatural field, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that way you just spread the goodness all around. You have every country, every region, every continent has their own team of Ghostbusters.
Can you imagine Ghostbusters in like Nunavut? The Northwest Territories.
Yeah.
But they hinted at that at the video game they did a few years ago with all the voice actors back, and Aykroyd and Ramis wrote that one. And it looks like in the new movie they're heading that direction, that they're expanding because business is booming in terms of ghosts.
Yeah. Now we had this is where the voice actors again were kind of like raising eyebrows. We had the zombies going kill, kill, kill as they're going through the city, and we've got the general here just absolutely wants to annihilate them, even though they are basically kids who've been turned into monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking at me. Can we say this? Can we do this? And I said, yeah, go right ahead. Don't worry about it.
We're canceled, pal.
Yeah, we're canceled here.
The gloves are off.
Yeah.
Amazing voice work by Chris Latta here as Decompose. He
Chris,
actually somehow turned up his Starscream and Cobra Commander voice from 10 to 11.
yeah, Chris was. It's a cliche to say he was a character, okay, but he was a character, and he had his own personal problems, his own demons that he had to deal with, and unfortunately, they ended up costing him his life in the end. But more than once, Flint would get a phone call at like 2 a.m. from the Santa Monica Police Department, and they'd say, "We got a Chris Latta here. You want to come bail him out?" And Flint would go, "Oh crap! Do we need him tomorrow?" "Yeah, all right, I'll come get him." And go bail Chris out at 2 a.m. He was a very smart guy, though. I mean, he was not.
Stand-up comedian, so usually stand-up comedians are pretty witty.
Yeah. But I mean, more than just witty. I mean, he was well-read. He was well-informed on a lot of things. Yeah, that is one of my favorite lines. If I ever want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you with a crowbar. Comprende, offende, and just let him have it. Yeah, he was very smart, but he ended up, the pain that was inside him, overcame him in the end.
Like a lot of comedians, they they try to deal with the pain inside by making others last. This is one of my favorite lines right here, where Hector wants to go along, and he says, "You're liable to have both legs broken and your eyes, both lights punched out." And Hector misinterprets, thinking it's the Inhumanoids that'll do the damage. No, it's me. I'm talking about me. I just love that never-ending feud between Augur and Hector, because Hector, he had been a nuisance on the other shows.
Oh yeah,
but this is a real rivalry that goes throughout this entire show of Augur and Hector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we had fun with that. I've had people ask me, will they ever bring this show back? And I'm in no position to say yay or nay, because Hasbro doesn't share their corporate decisions with me.
Yeah.
I would think in today's market, this could probably, gain traction and do well. But I mean, it did well when it was on. That's the thing. It was a very popular show. It just, the toy didn't do well.
Yeah, and they're
kind of
connected.
Yeah.
Like, there was never a case of a show that did great, a toy that tanked, but the show just kept on rolling, even though
there is Gem.
Oh, really?
Gem the toy line was canceled at the end of the first season,
and they just kept going.
And they were getting so much airplay for their commercials. For those who aren't aware, at the time, animated shows were distributed through something called the barter system. And the barter system was basically this: the syndicator would come to a local station and say, "We have a half-hour teen girl music drama, soap opera, that we will give you for free, but we want half the advertising time on it, because we will advertise our product, and you get local advertising the other half of the time." So for a quote half-hour show, a half-hour show is typically actually just 24 minutes, and 24 minutes including credits. You figure there's about 3 or 4 minutes of commercials at the end that would be completely local. But in the show itself, in that 30-minute time slot, you've got about 6 minutes of commercials. The syndicator would say, "Give us 3 minutes of commercials, you get the other 3. So every Sunbow show would advertise Hasbro products unless it was a product linked to the show. You never saw a G.I. Joe commercial on G.I. Joe. You saw Transformers, Gem, even My Little Pony, but you never saw G.I. Joe. Conversely, My Little Pony, you saw all the other Hasbro toys advertised on that show.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, so that was how they got these things out there. They literally gave them away for free. Nobody ever had to pay for this stuff because the advertising, it was all amortized into the advertising budget. And there was just a flood in the market is what the problem was. Too many people were doing toy-based shows. And then on top of that, others got the idea that, well, we can import Japanese anime and we can do the same bartering thing. We don't have to create a product ourselves. We can just say, we'll advertise national products in our 3 minutes and you can advertise local stuff. So they literally flooded the market, and there was just too many things that were too similar to one another. If you're a fan of 80s animation and really knowledgeable, you'll know there was Brave Star, there was Star Saber, and Galaxy Rangers. I think that was the third one. 3 literal space cowboy shows, all of which had robotic horses in them, because of course. And they all came out in a very narrow time slot to one another. I mean, I think there's like 18 months separated them. And it's too much of the same thing. And there was literally scores, maybe even hundreds of shows out there. There was more programming than you could fit on the air at that time. Now you have channels dedicated to anime and animation, and they're streaming, so you can watch whenever you want. Back then, it had to be, you had to schedule a block of time, and there wasn't anybody doing 24-hour-a-day anime. It was, you'd get maybe an hour in the morning before school started. You get an hour and a half, 2 hours in the afternoon after school ended, and then whatever you could squeeze in on a weekend.
Do you think the reason Gem continued on without the toy line supporting it is because it was a girl show compared to all the other boy shows? Yeah. Christy Marks was the story editor on that. She wrote the Bible. She did the show, and she did it pitch perfect. It was just realistic enough that you could look at it and go, yeah, I can believe the relationships. The stories are kind of far-fetched. The relationships I absolutely buy into. And ultimately, that's what sold the show. I mean, the crazy adventures that went on, that was just, that's TV. But the relationships, that's what people liked about the show, and they kept coming back to it. The problem was that the Gem doll was an incredibly ugly looking doll. Mattel has a patent on Barbie, and you can't do a doll that exactly matches Barbie's physical dimensions. You will get sued because you were infringing on Mattel's patent. Really?
So when they did the Gem doll, the feet had to be bigger. The head had to be larger. The clothes would fit a Barbie doll. They would hang loose, but they would fit on a Barbie doll. But the Barbie doll clothes wouldn't fit on the Gem dolls.
Oh, okay.
So the target audience, many of them already had a lot of Barbie stuff. And they would get a Gem doll, and almost none of the Barbie stuff would fit. Conversely, the Gem stuff Barbie could use, and it was like the Betamax VHS war. I mean, it's like two great products, but unless you're like a real huge media buff, you're not going to have both in your house.
Yeah,
and that's ultimately what did in Gem. But the thing was, the show was so popular, and it was hitting a demographic that Sunbow wasn't hitting with any of the other shows.
You don't think girls were into Inhumanoids?
See, this is the thing. Now I'm going to be very frank here. We had fans of all ages, all gender in all of our shows. We would have girl Transformer fans. We would have, they now call them bronies, older boys who really like My Little Pony because there was something about My Little Pony that spoke to them in terms of, having a gang that you could associate and be friends with and pal around with. And it wasn't combative. It wasn't like G.I. Joe or Transformers where there was this never-ending, threat of violence. It was just hanging around, having kid-sized adventures, basically, if you were a pony. We had fans in every show, had fans in every demographic, but certain shows hit harder in certain demographics than others. My Little Pony was generally, 8 years and younger, boys and girls, but they were a younger audience. Transformers, 9 to 10 was the target audience, primarily male, but we did have a lot of females. We also had a lot of older fans who enjoyed it. G.I. Joe was 12 and primarily boys, but there were a lot of girls who liked it as well. Gem hit the tween to teen girl market when there was virtually nothing else out there. I may be wrong, so if I am, but I don't think Sailor Moon had been launched at that point in the United States. And they didn't have any idea just how big that market could be.
Oh, you're right. Sailor Moon, it says here 1995.
Yeah. Okay. So Gem came out and it was for 2 years, literally the only thing for the tween to teen girl market. And Hasbro recognized this and went, well, we're a big hit with that audience. There's no reason to stop making the show because we can reach that audience with other product. It doesn't have to necessarily be Hasbro product. We can sell advertising time to people who want to reach that market. So they kept the show going for a second season, and it remained popular in reruns. It was popular on DVD and now Blu-ray, and they tried bringing it back as a movie. Christie says that after the movie was released, the producers came to her rather apologetically and said, we should have come to you and had you do the script instead of trying to reinvent the wheel from day one.
Yeah.
So maybe in the future, give it time to lay fallow for a while. It'll come back as a better rendition than the movie.
I had never heard that the producers went to Christie and said, whoops, we should have went with you. And I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I've been saying for years that whoever's making these G.I. Joe movies should be knocking on Larry Hama's door or sending him an email. Because, who knows the story better than him? But this, well, they should be knocking on your door as well. Absolutely. But this idea of a toy commercial show that the toy bombed and then, hey, let's just keep doing a successful TV show for the commercial time. It's really fascinating to me that's how that turned out.
We had something similar with Visionaries.
Yeah.
And Visionaries was relatively successful as a toy line, but it was a case of once G.I. Joe and Transformers indicated you could do that sort of thing and be successful with it, everybody and their pet monkey was running out with an imitation. They were either creating their own imitation or they were bringing in something from Japan and they were bringing in the licensing that went along with it, like Robotech, which I love the Robotech series. I thought they did a really clever job blending 3 different series together into one overarching story. But again, that was, it was the barter system. We'll give you 65 half-hour episodes. We just want half the commercial time on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were popular, and they did a good job.
So when I was looking up the Gem credits here, I see that you wrote a couple episodes for Gem as well. You wrote for Inhumanoids. How much prep time did you have to do going into some of these newer shows to learn the characters, learn the situation, or did you have help from the showrunner to fill in the blank?
Oh, well, it varied. Generally, you picked up by osmosis, because you have to understand the Sunbow West office was, I won't say, it was probably mostly writers or story editors, and producers who would write as well as produce the show. So we were all familiar with the products as they were coming in. We would be told about it, because they'd always ask, if you come up with an idea, let us know, because they're always looking. You got 65 half hours you got to fill. You know, you'll take ideas from anywhere. With certain shows like Transformers and G.I. Joe, you know, thanks to the miniseries that started them, you had a touch point where you could say, okay, just look at the miniseries. That gives you the broad idea. Here are the character bios. Go nuts. And, you know, that was good for people who were coming up with their first few ideas. Once you became familiar with the show and the characters, writing a script for them, I mean, it was just like that. You could, you know, you go, okay, well, Sergeant Slaughter is attending a secret ninja competition. Okay, that virtually writes itself. You know what's going to happen. You know he's going to encounter this. Cobra will figure that out. It's just a matter of staging it and trying to come up with good dialogue. With Gem, I had daughters. Still have daughters, but my daughters were, let's see, they were teens and preteen, I think, at the time. And I was aware of what they were interested in, things that they liked. They enjoyed Gem, so I knew more about Gem probably than some of the other writers on the show, because I just, it was on my radar as a parent. So I didn't have a very difficult time adapting, you know, myself to writing for Gem. My Little Pony, we treated that as a palate cleanser. My Little Pony was story edited by Roger Slifer. And if you're a comic book fan, Roger's the guy who created Lobo for DC. So put that in your mind. You got Sweetness and Light, My Little Ponies, and by the guy who created Lobo.
Sometimes you want a salad, sometimes you want a steak.
Yeah, you know, but the great thing was, you know, you'd be writing Transformers, Joe, you'd be doing these slam bang action adventure things, and you go, I just want to do something different. And okay, well, the ponies are trying to find the magic wishing well. How about that? And, you know, you do an 8-minute pony script, and you just, that felt good. You know, I didn't have to blow something up. I didn't have to have a fight. Yeah. I could just let the story flow in a new direction. Then you get back to, you know, fighting Cobra. So, and
demons from the Earth's core as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's finish it off with this. Hypothetically, if they were to bring Inhumanoids back, and they most likely will, what seems to be happening nowadays is the fans will dust off an old property that's dormant. They'll dig it up just like an Inhumanoid, you know, encased in amber, and they'll do unlicensed versions of it, but they'll put so much love and passion into it, it starts to cause a rumbling. Like, what is this? This is really cool. And then fans discover the lore, the buried lore of it. And that's how these things sometimes get resurrected. So if Inhumanoids does come back, you know, possibly through fans, and then let's do a new movie. Since this episode that you wrote has so much humor interjected into it, you know, the scary dark show. I always think scary and dark when I think of Inhumanoids. And then your episode is hilarious. I was chuckling when I watched it before this the whole way through. You got a great one-liners all the way through it. Do you think humor is a vital part of making Inhumanoids work if it ever gets brought
For
back?
me, it certainly was. I could absolutely understand somebody who would approach it as, oh, this is just grim horror and we got to go Lovecraftian and it's got to be dark. And then, fine, that's your approach. That works. But like I said, my approach has always embraced the absurdity. And you know, sometimes the absurdity is just the characters recognizing, you know, this is kind of ridiculous what we're doing here. You know, we're, you know, dressed up like tanks and we're fighting muck monsters from the heart of the universe, of the earth. Yeah, that's the franchise. You know, get into it. I did a comic book for Marvel. I did three issues of a comic called NFL Super Pro. And the other writers on it, they approached it as just straight-faced, you know, Marvel superheroics. And my approach was, you've got a guy in a plastic football uniform running around doing superhero stuff. Okay, fine. We'll just go with that. And I wrote these three issues, and the only issues that people seem to talk about are the ones I wrote, because it's like I was actually interviewed by one podcast, and they listen to me and they go, "Oh, thank God it was a joke, because we were really worried. We thought you were nuts." Well, I may be nuts, but I was. It was an absurd idea, and it's like, okay, if that's the idea, we're just going with it. You bought NFL Super Pro, here is NFL Super Pro. This is everything that's in it. Inhumanoids, same thing. You bought Inhumanoids, you told us who the characters were, what the situation was. Fine. This is the logical conclusion from that. So
Mm-hmm. Do you, if they were to make a live action movie, do you have any, just off the top of your head, ideas for live actors for the 4 Earth Core guys?
That is an excellent question.
See, my problem is I don't know anyone today anymore. I haven't kept up with all the new actors, so all of my picks are like 10, 20 years ago.
This is a thing where it's the difference between Superman the movie and conversely the second Batman movie, not the Adam West, but the second one. Up until the 1978 Superman movie, up to and including the 1978 Superman movie, if you did a superhero show or movie, you typically did not get a named star. You did not get somebody who was famous. You just got somebody who could fit the costume. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. You just got somebody who looked like the character. George Reeves was a modestly well-known actor when he took Superman, when he did the movie Superman Meets the Mole Men, which everybody forgets. It ended up as like a 2-part episode of the show, but it was a de facto pilot for the TV show, but it was released theatrically. And he had been in Gone with the Wind. He had been in From Here to Eternity, Rancho Notorious, which was a Fritz Lang Western that was made in the 40s. He was in that. He was not an unknown actor. But compared to Kirk Allen and the 2 guys that played Batman, or the various actors who played Spy Smasher, Tom Tyler as Captain Marvel was known, as a Western hero. Most of the time it was a relatively unknown actor, and you put him in the role and you hoped that he would come across. And the logic at the time was, you want somebody who isn't an established star, because you want people who know the character from comic books to be able to accept whoever is playing him as that character, not sit there going, "Oh, that's George Clooney." Mm-hmm. After the success of the 1978 Superman, it became obvious you could cast major stars in roles. And when Michael Keaton was cast as Batman, I mean, the first thought everybody had was it was going to be, you know, a disaster. And then when they actually saw the movie, you may not think it's the best Batman movie ever made, but you definitely say it's a credible Batman movie.
I love it.
Yeah, it delivers everything you want in a Batman movie. And Michael Keaton was a well-known actor, and he sold it. People, you know, nobody went, that's Michael Keaton. They went, that's Bruce Wayne. No, it's Batman. And it was successful. Since then, particularly with the Marvel movies, they look to cast name actors, recognize faces. They try to capitalize on celebrity status. And it works. Who are we to say that's the wrong approach? It's clearly been one of the most successful movie series of all times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long way of saying I don't have the faintest idea.
Get a bunch of unknowns, lock them into a 7-picture deal.
Yeah.
Can you believe they've cast Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk? Yeah. And so when people geek out and they ask him, Mr. Ford, what's it like being the Red Hulk? He goes, what's a Red Hulk?
Yeah.
He doesn't know. He doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, this is something else that the voice actors quickly picked up on. To them, it's a job. They come in at 10 o'clock in the morning and they read, 10 lines as Duke in a G.I. Joe episode. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're reading 20 lines as Papa Smurf. And it's a job. You read what is put in front of you. That's why the reaction that we got, it was that they never saw anything like that, on their scripts before. They never had zombie teenagers chanting "kill, kill," and
Were you there for the reading?
Yeah. I try to attend every recording of a script that I wrote, because Wally Burr, first off, was great. He really figured out what the scripts were about, what the point of the story was. But there were times where a reading would be interpreted differently from the way it was intended. And the writer was allowed to be there, but the writer could never tell the voice actor, no, do it this way. But you could say to Wally, can you have him read it with a little more humor? This is not as threatening as it sounds. He's making a joke here. And Wally, 99 times out of 100, say, sure. And he'd tell whoever it was, put more humor in the line. It's, you're not threatening somebody. And another reason I would go is particularly for Transformers was every time I wrote a Transformers episode, I tried to work jazz into it, because if jazz is in the script, I get to hang out with Scatman Crothers all day. And wow, that's all I can say. I mean, people ask me about, well, what celebrities have you met? And I go, man, I got to hang out with Scatman Crothers. And they go, who? It's like, if you don't know, you don't know. There's no point in trying to explain it to you. But just an incredible person, incredible actor, wonderful entertainer. And, he is known for jazz, and he's known for The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for summing up a career in 2 roles?
Well, and you got Orson Welles, known for Citizen Kane.
I was so bummed that I didn't get a chance to actually meet Orson Welles. He passed away within a few days of recording the Transformers movie.
He gave it his all. That's why.
Gave it his all, and as we said, we killed Orson Welles.
Well, but God bless you for putting jazz in there, because he's one of my favorite characters. He's one of everyone's favorite character.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize that you were actively trying to give jazz more screen time in the show.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I would try to work Shipwreck in every time I could. with the GI Joe movie, they wanted the bulk of the Joes captured early on, so the new Joes could be the focus of the story. And I had to fight like the Dickens to keep Shipwreck in, just for the tiny amount that he's in for the rest of the movie.
Mhm.
I really wanted to base, if they had truly allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do, I would have based the movie around Shipwreck. But they wanted something else, so we got something else.
Cobra la 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 la. Well, Buzz, thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Really, really enjoyed doing this one. And
I enjoyed being here too. Thank you. And it was great to see that episode for literally first time in 40 years. I'm not kidding.
wow.
I have not, as I said, I put the stuff down and I walk away from it, and I have fond memories of the show. I've talked about it when people have asked me questions, but I literally have not seen the episode in over 40 years' time.
Wow. Well, it's awesome that people can listen to a commentary now along with the episode. Before we sign off here, do you have anything you want to plug or any appearances or projects you're working on?
I have if you like my offbeat story sense, on Kindle Vella, I have a novel called Cheeky. And you can read the first few installments for free, and then after that, it's a subscription-based thing. It will be coming out very shortly as an ebook and as a paperback through Amazon. But right now, it's on Kindle Vella, which, as I said, is a subscription service. So give it a shot. It is a really oddball story based on something that actually happened in the year 2000.
So for anyone interested in that, I'll put the information in the video description down here. Just follow the links to find more out about that. And speaking of Kindle, I was just talking about that Kindle book for G.I. Joe you wrote some time back, just a few days ago with some pals. We were talking about what if Sunbow had gotten to continue Transformers and G.I. Joe instead of the other companies that did. And my take on it was, well, if Sunbow had continued, we would have gotten the most dangerous man in the world. We would have gotten the guy who created Cobra. We would have somehow worked around the whole Cobra Law speed bump and had it be a manhunt for the most dangerous man in the world. Joe's and Cobra's after him. That book it's gone, baby, gone. There's no way to get it anymore.
No official way to get it anymore. Let's just leave it at that at the time being.
Gotcha.
I have had people come to me and say, well, why aren't the people publishing the G.I. Joe comic adapting it? And my response is, I'm not that difficult to find. If they're interested, all they got to do is, send me a message and we can start talking.
As the old saying goes, my phone rings. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Your phone rings and your inbox receives messages.
Yep.
So awesome. Well, thanks again, Buzz. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
I really appreciated this. Yeah.
And thanks everyone out there for listening along. Hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, Nerd Namaste.